watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us here on Fox 35 News Plus. I'm Marlisa Goldsmith here on this Tuesday in for Garrett Weimer. We are going to begin our show with our top four at 4 this afternoon. We have a lot of things to get to this afternoon. We have LuAnne, anchor LuAnne Sorrell, joining us this afternoon to bring us the top 4 news stories that we are covering. LuAnne, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Yes. Okay. So let's kick things off with the first story of the day, a big story. It happened back in April when there was a massive mass shooting that happened at FSU. Phoenix Ikner made his very first court appearance this morning and was denied bond.
Yep. After spending nearly a month in the hospital after being shot in the jaw by police during that mass shooting, Phoenix Ikner was finally released from the hospital yesterday, made his first appearance in a Leon County courtroom today. He was denied bond. Now, he is charged with 2 counts of murder for killing 2 men last month and for shooting 6 others on the campus of FSU. You can see here the left side of his face is a little, looks like swollen. He had to have surgery after he was shot in the jaw by police. But yeah, there's still some questions, Marlisa. We don't know a motive even to this. So we're still waiting to hear why Phoenix Ikner, the stepson of a deputy, opened fire on the campus of FSU. All we got today was that he was denied bond. So we're still waiting to figure out why this young man chose to, commit a mass shooting at FSU.
Yeah, still a lot of questions that need answers right now. I also want to get to something that was just released a few moments ago. Attorneys for the family of one of the men who was killed in the mass shooting, they released a statement following the first appearance, and I want to read it for you. It says, "This is incredibly difficult, an incredibly difficult day for Tiru Chaba's family, particularly his wife and 2 young children. Our hope is that through the transparent investigation and prosecution of the events surrounding last month's shooting, today's court appearance will mark the first steps toward closure for a family that has suffered so much." They go on to mention that, the journey is far from over and they still have a long way to go in all of this. We know that this is only the beginning when it comes to a court proceeding. But the family also mentioned that they would like to thank the Tallahassee Police Department and the state attorney for their dedication, making sure that justice is done for their family and all of those who were impacted by the violence that happened on that day.
Yeah, that was the same family that held a news conference a couple of weeks ago asking that the police be more expedient and get to more information quicker, because we haven't heard from law enforcement up there in Tallahassee since the day of the shooting. So it sounded like they were a little frustrated with, how slow the information is coming out. They said, they want closure, they want justice for their loved one. So it's nice to see that, they are thanking law enforcement. It sounds like they are moving as quickly as possible, getting as many answers, but it's still an ongoing investigation that has to just be so hard to just sit and wait for this, information to just drip out.
Right. Can only imagine.
Yeah.
Now, when this first appearance happened, Marley Capper was in here with me this morning, and we had a chance to speak with a defense attorney who is not related to this case at all, has no connection to this case, but he talked to us a little bit about this appearance, and listen to what he had to say here.
Well, the reality is that sometimes the truth does not matter. I always say this, and the reason I say it is because what matters is what is admissible in court. For example, there could be evidence that was illegally obtained that's not admissible. We can see it on the news, we can see it everywhere, but the jury would never hear it. And so, we have to keep in mind as defense attorneys, he's presumed innocent until proven guilty. Therefore, it's the government or the state's job to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a very high standard, that he committed every element of the crime. So we keep the Constitution, we keep law enforcement, the government in check to make sure that procedures, the evidence is not contaminated, the evidence is not obtained illegally. So therefore, it's part of the process for us to filter in all the information and get the most best possible result for our clients. So the reality is that sometimes
very interesting information coming out there when it comes to figuring out what the state needs to prove. It seems like it's just so convoluted, and there are a lot of intricacies in going into case like this.
Yeah, this is just the first step. He was just released from the hospital, so this process is just beginning starting today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep. All right, let's move on to our second story here. LuAnne, talk about a dramatic legislative session, particularly the flux that the state is in right now when it comes to our budget negotiations that have been happening.
Marlisa, the legislature has one job. One thing they have to do, and that's pass a budget. They didn't get it done in the 60-day legislative session. So here we go.
Yep.
We're going to have an extended session now up in Tallahassee. Begins this week. They're not expecting a whole lot to be done. But the big hangup sounds like it's tax cuts. So the Republicans want to cut Florida's sales tax. The governor says, you send me a bill with sales tax cuts in it, I'm going to veto that thing, because that's not what Governor Ron DeSantis wants.
Right.
He wants property tax cuts for Floridians, because he says that would affect more people who live here. If you cut sales tax, that's going to be a relief to everyone, tourists included. So once again, the Republicans are going back and forth. They're going to have to come to some sort of an agreement. Even the budget proposals are off by like $4 billion between the House and the Senate. So they have a lot of work to do when they decide to get back to business up in Tallahassee.
A lot. It almost seems like a job that I don't know if it'll ever get done. Sad to say, but listen to this. House Speaker Perez, he spoke before the Florida House Representatives earlier today, and he absolutely slammed Florida Senate. I want you to take a listen to what he had to say.
Members, it had been my hope and intention that when you return to Tallahassee today, it would be to start the conference committee process. Unfortunately, as you are already aware, the Senate broke the deal that we had reached on day 60 and blew up our budget framework. I have very strong feelings about the Senate President's actions. As presiding officers, as elected officials, our word is our bond. Breaking our word, breaking a deal, is breaking faith not only with one another, but also with our institutions. However, I will not allow these actions to deter us from fulfilling our constitutional obligations. From my designation speech through today, I have time and again returned to one basic overriding principle for this term. State government has too much money, and that excess cash has led us to spend recklessly. Members, it had been my...
Well, you can definitely hear the frustration in his voice. They have had it at this point.
Not happy. Yeah, he wanted the Senate to sign the bill that the House had passed, but the governor was like, I'm going to veto it anyway. So I get it. You got to get it passed 3 by 3 entities, House, Senate, and the governor. So it sounds like they're back to the drawing board, Marlisa.
Yes,
Square one.
Yeah. So hopefully they can get it done this time, and it won't need to be extended
they're gonna have
again.
To. Yeah, by July they're going to have to.
Yes. Okay, so third story here. Governor Ron DeSantis, we were just mentioning him. He traveled to Ohio today, where he held a press conference with the Ohio Speaker of the House. Now, at the time, it was supposed to begin at 1 o'clock. We didn't know what this was going to be about. He finally appeared about 1:30 this afternoon, and he was there advocating for a constitutional amendment to sort of establish congressional term limits here.
Yeah, this has been kind of his passion project for quite a few years, but other people speculated he's trying to just keep his name out there because he wants to run for president again in 2028. He had said, no, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to push for congressional term limits. But, you know, he said before, you know, I'm not ruling out anything. We'll see what the future holds. So it could be him keeping his name out there, or it could be him, you know, doing what he said he was there to do in Ohio, and that's pushing for term limits. But I know some Florida lawmakers were not happy as they start the special session. They're like, why is the governor traveling to Ohio when there's so much work to be done here in Florida? So, yeah, a lot of politics in the spotlight today.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and take a listen to a portion of what he said in this press conference today.
This term limits movement is something I've been a part of for a number of years. I served 3 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives prior to becoming governor. I always remind people that I've recovered from that experience, but that experience did leave a mark about how Washington works and how the incentives to do really good policy are just skewed away from that. People get up there and basically they're told you got to pay your dues, you got to stay there, and the seniority and the longevity, and people want that to be their career. We have members that have been there for 30, 40 years, including people like Nancy Pelosi. That is not, I think, how the founding fathers envisioned this. I thought they thought at the time, you're going to get on horseback from somewhere in Virginia and go up to New York, which is where the capital was originally, or go to Philadelphia, eventually Washington, D.C. That's not something you're going to want to be doing for 30 years. And so they talked about the need for term limits and decided, you probably don't need it. This
Very interesting. A lot of political news happening right now,
Absolutely.
But we'll have to wait and see how things shake out. Now, final story for Top 4 at 4 today. Huge news in the sports world, especially here in Central Florida. Tampa Bay Rays legend Evan Longoria announced that he's going to retire, LuAnne.
Yes, he's considered the greatest player in Tampa Bay Rays history, and now he's officially going to retire as a Ray. I had to look this up because I wasn't familiar. It's kind of a cool backstory. He said he always wanted to retire as a Tampa Bay Ray. That didn't get to happen because he was traded in 2017. And then he never came back here playing the Rays, just never happened. So he never got to say goodbye to the fans of Tampa Bay. Well, now that's going to get to happen. He's going to sign a one-day contract on June 7th so that he can officially retire as a Tampa Bay Ray. There'll be a pregame ceremony. So if you are a Longoria fan, this is a game you probably won't want to miss. He didn't play last year in the MLB, and he said he never wanted to say he was retiring because then that would mean he retired from the last team he played for.
Yeah.
So he just kind of didn't play, left it alone. Well, now that he's going to sign this one-day contract, he can officially retire as a Tampa Bay Ray. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's going to be so special. Earlier today, Fox 35 had a chance to speak with J.P. Peterson of the J.P. Peterson Show about Longoria's legacy in Tampa Bay. Take a listen to this.
So he's always been a big part of our city here in Tampa Bay. I believe he lived on the Tampa side. He was everywhere. It wasn't Tampa, St. Pete. He was everywhere. So he became, he's you have these stars that come into your communities. Obviously, we have the Bucks and the Lightning. So we have these big stars that I think if you're doing a Mount Rushmore of athletic stars in Tampa, he has to be part of it. He is he's the ultimate Ray. We can argue about the other ones, obviously, with Steven Stamkos and Leroy Selman and Derek Brooks and Ronnie Barber and all those guys. But you got to include Longo. That's our baseball guy. He's the Rays all-time leader in all those categories. Home runs 262, games played 1,400, RBIs 891, runs 780, doubles 338, and WAR rating 51.7. He's the best. And he's a big part of Tampa Bay. I don't know if he's decided whether he's going to move back here. I wouldn't be shocked though. I think he loves Tampa Bay. He loves being a part of Tampa Bay. So he's always been
Oh, that's going to be something special.
Yes, because Tampa Bay loves him too.
Yes, they do.
This will be really nice.
This is going to be a huge day when it actually happens. All right, LuAnne, thanks so much for joining us today. That concludes our Top 4 at 4 on this Tuesday afternoon. Stick around because we are going to have much more news. We have some breaking news that we are following out of West Cocoa. We'll get to that as soon as we come back on the other side of this break. Welcome back to Fox 35 News Plus. We are just now getting new information about a heavy police presence that is out there in Brevard County. Let's take a listen into a press conference happening from officials there.
It appears that she'll survive.
That Mercedes that you mentioned, I don't know if you can mention this part. We just drove past this gas station, saw some deputies searching I believe it was a dark sedan Mercedes right at the gas station. Do you know if that's the same one?
I do not know for a fact, but it could be.
It seems like they just abandoned the car and ran somewhere is my assumption. But they also looked at a Nissan sedan that could have been a deputy's car, but they were looking around it with gloves as well. But just that one Mercedes is what we're...
From what I understand, based on the surveillance video that we've seen so far, that is the only vehicle involved.
Okay, 3 black men, no idea on the ages just yet. Those were who was in the Mercedes.
Best guess would be young adult or juveniles at this point in time. We're trying to get a better description pulled from the video so that we can get that out to people. We would ask anybody that would have information to either call our communications center with it or Crime Line. Like I said, we're very early in this investigation. It appears that there is some kind of an issue between these two parties, but we don't know what it is and why it escalated to what it did today.
Anytime you have 50 rounds firing off and around a child or around people.
The parking lot was full at the time, so we're very blessed that there's only one injury. Unfortunately, it is to a child who's an innocent victim, but very fortunate that there were no other injuries.
You said it was a store, so I'm assuming it's some type of convenience store or something back right behind us?
Yeah, right there.
Oh,
Cocoa Meat and Produce.
Produce. Okay, so right in that parking lot.
It's a little community grocery store. It's been here forever. And a lot of the people from the community, of course, this is where they go to shop and get stuff quickly.
Last quick question, probably don't know the answer to this one. The man who was with the baby, do we know if it's the father or anything like that?
I do not know his relationship to the baby.
But you guys have him in custody, or I don't know.
I know that they're interviewing him.
Yeah,
I don't know that he's in custody.
So they're speaking to him, trying to figure out what led up to this and who these people might be. All righty. Anything you think we're skipping over?
No.
Even though we know who you are, Todd, can I get your first, your last name, quick spell on that, and your title?
Yep. Todd Goodyear, T-O-D, G-O-O-D-Y-E-A-R, Public Information Officer, Brevard County Sheriff's Office.
Todd, thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate you helping us out.
All right, again, we were just listening into an update from Brevard County Sheriff's Office right there. That was Todd Goodyear, the Public Information Officer. You can see that there is a breaking news scene happening right there. We have a crew on scene, so that's why you're seeing the camera kind of make all sorts of movements here. We're trying to get a better idea of what is going on. But just to give you a brief recap of what we just learned, there was some sort of a shooting that happened in West Cocoa this afternoon. Earlier this afternoon, we saw there was a heavy police presence out there. There were lots of evidence markers. We counted more than a dozen that were out there on the scene. Again, Brevard County Sheriff's Office is investigating this. But just now when we heard our reporter out there, Chancellor, when catching up with Todd Goodyear of Brevard County Sheriff's Office, again, a shooting where 50 rounds were reported that had been fired. This happened in a very crowded lot. Plenty of people that were out the middle of the day. In the afternoon, a 2-year-old was reported shot here in this shooting. Unfortunately, we sent out a push alert on your phone. If you have the Fox Local app downloaded to your phone, you definitely got that push alert sent out as soon as we learned of this shooting that happened. We are going to continue monitoring this shooting here on Fox 35 News Plus, and we'll have the latest on Fox 35 News at 5, while we have our crew on scene continuing to gather information and speak with people who may have seen or heard anything that happened. Again, we do know at this time a 2-year-old girl was shot in Cocoa. Heavy police presence out there, and we're still working to gather more details for you. In the meantime, we want to go ahead and transition and bring in Storm Team meteorologist Noah Berggren, who has been waiting to stand by here. Noah, I want to make sure that I get you in the shot. Here we go right here. Noah, welcome to Fox 35 News Plus. Listen, okay, we had so much rain. And now we're kind of drying out just a little bit. And that's going to make for sunny skies and heat that I don't know if Central Florida is ready for yet, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, you know, Marlisa, you put it really well. I think it's going to catch a lot of people off guard.
Yes.
We're going to go right into dog days of summer like that. So it's going to be really hot.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so
See, you like the heat, though. See, you like the heat, but to a certain extent, if I'm not mistaken, right? There is a point even for you where it's, okay, it's too hot out.
Yeah, there is a point at some point that it is a little too hot, but I'll take the heat over the cold any day, honestly, Noah.
I tell you what, Marlisa, even though I don't know your schedule next Tuesday,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll phone you in, or I'll ask you before I'm on. I'll ask you next week, and we'll revisit how that sentiment is after a few days.
Okay. Okay.
We'll wait till you see the 7-day.
All right.
7-day. I just made this before I came on here with you, Marlisa, and here's the updated forecast numbers to my side. You guys will see it here in a second. We're looking at about 88 tomorrow, 92 on Thursday, 94 Friday, 96 Saturday, 97 Sunday, 97 Monday, 98 next Tuesday. This heat's not going to go anywhere for a while. You know, it's not often you get this level of heat without rain in Florida. We do get temps mid to high 90s, except most times when you get a 7-day with temps like that, there's rain on every day, or most days, and it's in July or August. So this will be one of the hotter spells we've had in Central Florida in several years. We don't have a 10 or a 14-day forecast. If we did, you'd see, Marlisa, the temps go out into next week still at this rate. My point is, it's going to be a very, even for true die-hard, long-time Floridians, this will be a very, 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 very hot spell because normally when you see temps above 95 in Orlando, it's raining every day because it's July or August, and after it rains, the temp goes from 95 to 70.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, with this spell, there's no rain chance, so it's still going to be 90 degrees at 9 o'clock at night this weekend into next week. So this is going to be a really, really hot spell here. Now, the good news, if you're not a huge fan of the big heat, is the humidity is going to be in check. So you've lived in the heartland like I have, Marlisa. You know that the temperature and the heat index often in the Midwest is more than it is here in Florida, where it's 90, but it feels like it's 110. We won't really have that this weekend. It'll be 96, 97, 98, but the heat index will only be maybe 1 or 2 degrees above the air tap. So it's going to be super hot, but not unbearably humid. So that is something to note too.
Yeah, very important to note. So when it comes to planning for the weekend, actually, I want to go back to the drought conditions. Can you give us an update? Where do we fall when it comes to the drought? Because I know we were down. We needed some rain desperately here in Central Florida. We got it. It was almost a little too much for some areas because then you had flooding issues. But did our drought levels come to where they need to be at this time of year?
In some areas, yes. Marlisa, I don't have that graphic made for you, in part because we'll get an updated view on Thursday this week.
Okay, good.
The drought monitor that we use in the United States through NOAA and the NWS, that comes out once a week on Thursday. So Thursday this week, we'll get to show everybody the updated view that'll take into account the rain that we had. But in some places, Marlisa, the drought is going to be vastly improved. In others, it's going to stay the same because, for instance, in Satellite Beach, Melbourne, it barely rained an inch. And then, for instance, in eastern Orange County, like Bithlo, by UCF, it rained 10 inches. So this was not every single county got a lot of rain. There were many areas that barely got an inch. Places like the Villages only got an inch and a half. So there will be the majority got a lot better, but there is 30-ish% of our area that stayed the same or will actually get worse. So unfortunately, there will be probably areas that have fires and brush fires in the news again, probably by this time next week.
Oh boy, well hopefully it doesn't become what it was just a couple weeks ago. It seems like we were reporting on one of those fires just about every day, Noah.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder too that that little spell we had, I know you remember I told you this on the news at 8 and 11 when we were anchored together, but that this was not the start of the rainy season. The rainy season being the rain every single day, because there's no rain now in sight for a while. We're probably still a few weeks away from the it's raining every single afternoon in Florida type pattern that sets in every year. So we're still several weeks from having daily rain chances, which normally starts at the end of May-ish.
Yes, but it was a little preview of what we can expect, and like you said, a reminder of what we'll see once we actually get into that rainy season.
Yeah, and we'll see. It's possible it could even be delayed past normal this year, but at least as far out as we can see, it's sunny, it's hot, it's pool weather, it's beach weather, water parks. This is probably going to be as early as it's ever been for, near 100 temps in many years. I actually am trying to work on that, finding that out for the news tonight. But
yeah,
this is
that'll
a
be
very
good.
early blast of this level of heat. Normally you'd see this, again, July and August, not really the pre-Memorial Day.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the water parks. I actually just got a text message from a friend who asked availability for the family. What are you all doing at the end of the month? Because we're going to the water park. So you better believe we will be there.
I take it somebody has seen the forecast on their phone. Yes.
Yes, they are following. They're watching every single night, Noah.
Hopefully, that'd be the best thing. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for joining us here on Fox 35 News Plus for an update on the weather. Listen, I want you guys to stick around because we have still so much more coming up. We're following breaking news and other news of the day here on Fox 35 News Plus. Don't go anywhere. Sorry about that. It appears I didn't have my microphone turned on. Thanks for rolling with the punches with us here. Let me backtrack and take you back to the beginning of what I was just saying. First of all, thank you for joining us here on Fox 35 News Plus. I'm Marlisa Goldsmith in for Garrett Weimer this afternoon. Big political day. We are talking a lot of political news here in the state of Florida. But the governor held a news conference earlier this afternoon in Columbus. If you're wondering, what was the governor doing in Columbus? A lot of legislators were wondering that same question as well. But it appears that he actually was meeting up with the Ohio Speaker of the House this afternoon and an Ohio State representative because they had a very important matter to talk about. And he was actually there to advocate for a constitutional amendment to establish congressional term limits. It's something we've heard him talk about in months past, and he's bringing it up once again. We're talking about 3 terms in the House, 2 terms in the Senate, and with 2 representatives from Ohio. He had this conversation. We want to go ahead and take a listen into what he had to say during that press conference this afternoon. Let's listen in.
This term limits movement is something I've been a part of for a number of years. I served 3 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives prior to becoming governor. I always remind people that I've recovered from that experience, but that experience did leave a mark about how Washington works and how the incentives to do really good policy are just skewed away from that. People get up there and basically they're told you got to pay your dues, you got to stay there, and the seniority and the longevity, and people want that to be their career. We have members that have been there for 30, 40 years, including people like Nancy Pelosi. That is not, I think, how the founding fathers envisioned this. I thought they thought at the time, you're going to get on horseback from somewhere in Virginia and go up to New York, which is where the capital was originally, or go to Philadelphia, eventually Washington, D.C. That's not something you're going to want to be doing for 30 years. And so they talked about the need for term limits and decided, you probably don't need it. This term limits movement is something I've been a part of for a number of years. This term limits movement is something I've been a part of for a number of years. I served 3 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives prior to becoming governor. I always remind people that I've recovered from that experience, but that experience did leave a mark about how Washington works and how the incentives to do really good policy are just skewed away from that. People get up there and basically they're told you got to pay your dues, you got to stay there, and the seniority and the longevity, and people want that to be their career. We have members that have been there for 30, 40 years, including people like Nancy Pelosi. That is not, I think, how the founding fathers envisioned this. I thought they thought at the time, you're going to get on horseback from somewhere in Virginia and go up to New York, which is where the capital was originally, or go to Philadelphia, eventually Washington, D.C. That's not something you're going to want to be doing for 30 years. And so they talked about the need for term limits and decided, you probably don't need it. But I think that the incentives have really changed now. Even though Congress is almost universally disapproved of by the public year after year, 95, 98% of incumbents are reelected. It's not enough to say, well, people can just vote people out, because the incumbents have skewed the system and financing and campaign regulations to be able to make it difficult to dislodge them. But this Article 5 convention from the states is something that Florida has certified. We now have more and more states, up to 12, and this really just started a few years ago in earnest. Ohio is naturally the next state to take this on and do, and I think it would be important to advance the movement of term limits, but I also think just Ohio being an important state politically in the history of our country, but certainly right now in modern and with the modern Republican Party, it being one of the strongest Republican states now that has a large population, I think symbolically would be really, really important. You look at the national debt, you look at the lack of productivity in Congress. I'm also a supporter, full disclosure, of the balanced budget resolution that Ohio has passed, Florida's passed. I think we're now up to 27, 28 states. I think you're going to end up seeing that get into the 30s very soon. I think the incentives for them to basically bankrupt the country are strong. If you had a balanced budget amendment, it would change the incentives. If you had term limits, it will change the incentives. You know you have a limited amount of time, so make something of it. Do some big things that are actually going to leave a legacy that you can look back on. And I also think it's important that you serve in the House, you serve in the Senate. That's great, and do that, but at some point, you ought to live under the laws that you pass and see whether that was good work or not. And what happens in modern Congress, once they get into that, they kind of become part of a separate political class that's not really ever back in normal society in many instances, because even when people serve 20, 30 years, a lot of times they just stay in Washington after that. So this is a very positive reform. I think if the founding fathers were here today, people like James Madison would support term limits, giving all the changes that have happened over these many, many decades. And I have never seen an issue, and Representative Workman hit it right on the head. It's not a partisan issue. Republican, Democrat, rich, poor, male, female, black, white, it doesn't matter. People support term limits. You ought to do the right thing for the right reason, but this happens to also be very good politics for the members of the Ohio legislature to sign up for, because people are going to want to see this as something that is that is getting legs, and it will get legs. And if Ohio comes, that's going to lead to many more states, I think, pretty shortly doing it. And as you build, you really, really have strong men. Now, people say, well, you've never done a convention of the states. Could you have a runaway convention and just have them write an entirely new constitution? The answer to that is basically no. There's two ways to propose amendments. The Congress can propose it with 2/3 of each body, or the states can propose it with 2/3 of the states, which would be 34 states. So you can do that. Ratifying it is the same no matter if Congress or the state proposes it. It requires 3/4 of the states of this country, 38 states, to ratify an amendment to the Constitution. I don't think 38 states are going to ratify the work of a, quote, runaway convention. But even if you're concerned about that, there's nothing preventing Ohio, if they certify this, for putting restrictions on what the delegates are allowed to do. You can have the governor recall delegates that are straying from that. I don't think it would come to that. I really don't. Term limits is popular. It could absolutely get 3/4 of the states to be ratified. You know, really crazy changes like, you know, people have talked about, oh, they could go after the Second Amendment. None of that is going to have any chance to get ratified. So I don't think it's an appropriate concern. And I also think if that's a concern you had, you're basically saying that the Founding Fathers got it wrong. I think the Founding Fathers got it right. I think they knew that constitutions periodically needed to be amended, not something you should do lightly. It's not something you should do every year, but sometimes they needed that. And if you lodged it only in Congress, if Congress was the problem, then the people would have no recourse to make the changes that are necessary. So the states created the federal government, not the other way around. It was only natural that the states would also be able to propose amendments to the Constitution, understanding that no matter who proposes it, the states or the Congress, 3/4 of the states ratify any changes to the Constitution. So I commend the Speaker, I commend the representatives here in Ohio for doing this. This is kind of a passion project of mine. I've been involved in this issue for a number of years. I've rarely seen an issue that no matter what audience I'm speaking in front of, will get a more positive response in any part of the state of Florida, or heck, any place I've been in the country where this has come up. People know that this is the right thing to do. So I look forward to seeing progress here. If there's anything we can do to help in other states, I'm willing to do it because I do think it's important for the future of the country.
Again, that was Governor Ron DeSantis speaking at a news conference in Columbus where he brought up advocating for a constitutional amendment to establish congressional term limits. You are watching Fox 35 News Plus. Thanks so much for being here with us this afternoon. Stick around. We have much more after the break. Welcome back here to Fox 35 News Plus. I'm Marlisa Goldsmith in for Garrett Weimer again. Now, the state budget has been a huge topic of discussion here in Florida and probably across the nation. They're talking about us here in Florida. And the fact that lawmakers still have not reached a final budget agreement is what everyone is talking about on this Tuesday. There have been many disagreements over tax cuts and spending levels. So we want to get into this right now. Here's the deal. Budget negotiations have been back and forth, but they are now back in full swing up in Tallahassee. Florida House approved a concurring resolution and extended the state legislative session to try their best to figure out the state budget here. They have one more attempt to try to work through everything they have going on. And this afternoon, we heard from House Speaker Danny Perez. Now, what was interesting, when he stood up to make remarks, he actually took aim at Governor Ron DeSantis and his actions. I want you to take a listen to this.
How close do you feel like we are on a budget, and are we at risk of a shutdown?
I don't think we're at risk of a shutdown, but I don't think we're any closer than we were 3 weeks ago. Yeah, I think we had to start all over again. We had made tremendous progress last week, or so we believed, with the Senate. We obviously had a deal. You guys heard it from the rostrum here. You heard it from the rostrum across the rotunda, and that obviously went up in flames. For what reasons, I'm not completely sure. I did read the memo that the Senate President sent out, but it's just, you know, it's for me, in my community of Miami, and my culture as a Cuban, you know, your word is your bond, and that means everything to us. I'm one of the old school guys. I can broker a deal off a handshake. You can take that to the bank, and you know, it's a sad day in the legislature when all of a sudden you're going backwards instead of going forwards on something that should have been coming to an end here shortly.
Can you explain how he kind of broke his word, as you say? What events took place? How did you find out about all of this?
Oh, we spoke on the phone. You know, just giving me a call and told me that he could no longer honor the deal that we had agreed to the week before, and we moved forward from that. And so we're back in conversations all over again. We're trying to get somewhere. It's moving at a snail's pace, unfortunately. But we're going to keep trying. It's our obligation. We have to get this budget done. We're going to get this budget done. It's just a matter of whether we get it done today, or we get it done in a week, or we get it done in 2 weeks. That's our constitutional duty. We were elected to pass a balanced budget. It's the only thing that is our responsibility that we cannot avoid.
In that conversation, did the Senate President cite the governor's opposition to the sales tax cut? Was that
no, he did not.
He did not?
No, sir.
So you don't know why his opposition came up?
He didn't believe it was in the best interest of his chamber.
Of his chamber. Okay.
Can I ask you a question while you're in this sort of limbo, for lack of a better word? The House of Representatives in D.C. has rolled out a bill for Medicaid cuts. They've rolled out a bill for SNAP cuts. I'm just wondering if there, at some point in time, where there might be a conversation where, regardless of all the, you said you're concerned about spending, well, it seems like you might be getting delivered something from D.C. that's going to reduce the amount of money coming to the state. Any thought about sort of recalibrating here and trying to figure out what it might mean for Florida with all these things happening in D.C. before you proceed?
What the federal government does is up to them. One thing I'm not going to do is leave government spending cuts to the hands of the federal government. I'd rather do something here at the state. This is what we control. We are state elected officials. It is our job to control our budget. What the federal government does is up to them. But what we can do is right in front of us right now. We can cut the bad habit of spending, wasteful spending that has been happening for years and years. We can stop that right now by setting the example. I mean, how hypocritical of us to say that local governments are spending wasteful taxpayer dollars, and we're not willing to do it to ourselves. We're not able to look into the mirror and look at ourselves in the face and say, well, let's actually set the example and cut the wasteful spending right now. I mean, if you listen to the speech, this isn't far-fetched. We have agencies that have misplaced $160 million. Let's not think that there isn't a reason for having to give the speech that we just gave, for having to roll out the budget that we are willing to roll out at any moment. We will cut wasteful spending in the House. How we get there is something we've always been open to. I stay unchanged on that. Whoever wants to come up with a proposal from the Senate to come over here, I don't care which senator it is that comes with some sort of proposal that cuts wasteful spending, we will consider it. But that is the #1 goal of the House, and that's not going to change.
Mr. Speaker, there's the budget considerations, but politically, you know, Republicans arguing with Republicans, kind of the governor going after the House. Do you have concerns that this could affect the political future of members of this chamber?
I don't believe this will affect the future of the members in this chamber. I think the state of Florida is in a great place today, but doesn't mean we can't make it better. The fact that the governor is choosing to continue to get on his private plane, paid for by taxpayers, by the way, and go to every part of the state only to hit the House is something that he is choosing to do. That is not what I would do if I were the governor, but he's entitled to make that decision. I know today he took his private plane out to Ohio. If he would spend more time here in this Capitol having conversations with myself and other members of the House, he would understand our position, why we're in that position, and if he is able to convince us otherwise and have us move in another direction, maybe in his direction, well, then he has every opportunity to do so. The difference between the governor and the House is always willing to have the tough conversation. We're always willing to answer the tough questions. We're always willing to have the debate. The governor isn't willing to have a conversation, period. Period. There's no difference between him and any 7th grader in Miami-Dade County right now who tweets. That's the only difference, is he's not willing to have the conversation with a person like me or any other person in the House. You don't want to have it with me? No problem. Go pick one of the other 119 members to have the conversation with. He's not willing to do that. But at some point, adults have to prevail. I'm willing to have that conversation in person at any moment. He is not. And that's a question that he has to face every single day. It should be asked every single day. Why are you not willing to have the tough conversation? What is it that are you scared? Is he scared of having the tough conversation? I have no other conclusion to reach but that. Because if not, why wouldn't he sit down? So I don't know when that conversation is going to happen. I haven't spoken to him in quite some time. But eventually the Senate and the House will come to an agreement on the budget, and then we will go from there.
Do you think the budget summit, could you release your best and latest offer and the Senate's best and latest offer to you so that our readers understand how far apart you're at and what issues you're still fighting over?
Look, the conversations are they're fluid. I mean, this isn't something concrete. It's more of a framework, and the conversation goes back and forth. This isn't a piece of paper that I can give you. It is words that we are having on saying, does this work better or does that work better? And that's how the conversations go back and forth. Like I told you from my speech, we have spoken about multiple options for them. We can go with a critical needs budget and make sure that we take care of what's necessary and move all the rest of the money into reserves, or we can go back to the old deal that we had if the Senate wants to honor their word from last week. And if there's another option for the tax cut that I'm missing, but that still obliges us to the recurring tax cut, well then call me and tell me what that offer may be. But there is nothing concrete for us to share because these are fluid conversations that are happening on the phone.
So is that the number one sticking point, is having a permanent tax cut?
Cutting recurring spending is the number one goal of the House. The House is not moving. It is not HB1, it is not HB3, it is not HB5, 7, or 9. I am not going to leave this legislature in a worse position than I found it, and I didn't find it in its best position. We are going to change that, and future legislatures will thank us for that. That is our goal. We're not moving.
We will be right back with more Fox 35 News Plus on the other side of this break. Welcome back to Fox 35 News Plus. Listen, we got to get into some sports before we leave you. Orlando sports are killing the game right now. They are really rocking it. We are bringing back titles, national championship titles, but now we want to turn to soccer, and it's a big deal here. The Orlando City Lions are taking on Charlotte FC tomorrow night right here in Orlando. And Orlando City head coach Oscar Perea answered a few questions from reporters earlier today about this upcoming match. We want to check in with him to see what he had to say and how he's feeling ahead of the big game.
I know. We're preparing well. The time to work is not much, but I think we have a lot of repetitions already, and the team feels that we're ready and we're good. So this time I'm just trying kind of to refresh them up and see that we can get energy and execute the game plan that we have for Charlotte.
Very familiar with Charlotte FC from the playoff series last year. This will be the first game since that dramatic ending of the series last fall. What are you expecting to see from them?
It's the same coach. They have added a couple players, not many, but it is true that both of teams, we know each other a lot, and it seems that the formats hasn't changed that much either. So, but anyway, we'll be prepared for what it takes, and our preparation has been strong.
You mentioned the other night how frustrated you were not to win that game with a lead at home. How important is it to make sure that you get all 3 points here in this you get a second chance here real quick right here?
Right now it's important. It's important to aim always, because victory is in football and first division, and this industry is essential, is what we look for. But I have to recognize as well that we have played so good against New England, and we saw that team that we wanted to see, and it's probably one of the reasons that we are so bitter today, knowing that playing that good, we conceded a couple goals that we shouldn't allowed. And then that has been the feeling. But when you see the whole thing, and I see the game after, and I think we're growing a lot. We're growing a lot. Remember that we prepared this team to win the championship and now to win the game, and we're progressively just getting closer to what we want. And despite of the changes and despite of the absences that we had, I think that the boys have responded so good.
When you look at the Eastern Conference standings, I mean, it's a tight race.
Mm-hmm.
You have Cincinnati, Columbus, Red Bulls, Orlando, Charlotte's in the mix now. But when you look at just how many teams are just competing just to be on the top of the Eastern Conference, does it surprise you to kind of see, at this point of the season, almost 5 teams kind of battling out for that tough spot?
And probably more. This conference is hard. And the competition, I think we are very there, all, not just in the points, but it seems like this is a conference that has a lot of similarities on the results on the team. So that's why we need to have always the north. We know where we're going. Because at this point, when you get in the standings, and you see that in a few points can put you in the top, but a couple points put you down there. Let's try not to stress too much, because this is a long journey still, and we want to win every game. We do want it.
Is there always, like, I guess, a sense of pressure that you mentioned it with the New England game? You guys wanted to close it out and win it out. I guess, is there a sense of urgency to, going into Charlotte, going into Miami, going into just the rest of the game of the season? The team needs to, I guess, get better in that aspect of the game.
Right.
They need to close out the games.
It's true. It's true. We feel that after when we were leading 2-0, it was too prompt to just let the other team tie it up. And when we put the game 3-2 as well, just find a way to maintain that result is a virtue of the teams sometimes that want to ascend in the top. But it seems like we still have work to do, and we accept it, and we're working on it. So seeing that competitiveness on the standings, and it's going to create urgencies no matter what, because this is what we do daily. We need to win games, but I do want to have a highlight that these guys are playing good. They're playing well.
Obviously, we're going to talk to David pretty soon. We've seen a lot of players, I guess, take new roles. Obviously, Dagger having to kind of find his way in the midfield, but with David, he's been playing more, I guess, as a left back, because he's been playing on the left side of the back line. How have you kind of been able to see him kind of just approach that new responsibility, and how has he been able to kind of contribute positively in that position?
Now, it's not easy to do it with a player who has been adapted not just to the league, but adapting to the system, but now adapting to a position that we consider that he can contribute a lot on, keeping us safe there, but also just giving us some other functions. And David is doing it so good on adapting himself to that position, and I think he's growing.
Well, we are wishing the team good luck tomorrow as they take on the other team in that match there. I want to thank you all so much for joining us here on Fox 35 News Plus for the very latest. We want to go ahead and take a live look into the studio right now as John Brown and LuAnne Sorrell are preparing for our evening newscast, which begin at 5. Fox 35 News at 5 begins in just a couple of minutes. We'll see you then.
Fox 35 News starts now with breaking news.
A 2-year-old rushed to the hospital after being shot this afternoon in Cocoa. A man and a woman were pushing a stroller when 3 men hopped out of a black Mercedes. At some point, those 3 men and the man with the stroller started shooting at each other, and that little girl was caught in the crossfire. Thanks for joining us today. I'm LuAnne Sorrell.
And I'm John Brown. The little girl underwent surgery. The sheriff says that 50 shots were fired in just a matter of seconds. Now deputies are looking for the 3 men in that black Mercedes. That shooting happened right in front of a market in Cocoa. And Fox 35's Chancellor Wynn joins us live on the scene. So Chancellor, this sounded like a Wild West gun battle right there along a busy street.
Yeah, John, Sheriff Wayne Ivey for Brevard County Sheriff's Office is actually calling it a gunfight. And I'm going to step out of the way very quickly because you can actually zoom in a little bit where they're taking a few pictures right there near that grocery store. That's the little meat and produce shop. There's a baby's stroller, and that's right in front of the area where all these shell casings are. This is the parking lot where the sheriff says at least 50 gunshots were fired. They are still working to learn who fired those gunshots first and why there was actually a, quote, gunfight happening right at this neighborhood grocery store. What's also interesting, the sheriff's office says the parking lot full of people at the time, and it's amazing and lucky that only one person got shot, but unfortunately it is a 2-year-old little girl. We do know she's currently in surgery. Sheriff's office says she has non-life-threatening injuries, but with a 2-year-old shot in broad daylight, I want you to hear how the sheriff is reacting to this gunfight in the middle of a Cocoa neighborhood.
These individuals don't care about anything. They're evil. And they're not only putting that toddler at risk, there were other people around. You know, you're talking about 1:30, you've got people driving all by, broad open daylight. So this is just a bunch of individuals acting stupid and doing very stupid things.
Now, the man who was pushing the stroller with that 2-year-old little girl, Sheriff's Office does have him doing interviews right now. Again, they're trying to work to learn specifically why this gunfight ensued and who fired those first shots. As for those 3 gunmen who reversed a Mercedes car into the parking lot before jumping out and those gunshots being fired, those gunmen took off, and right now the Sheriff's Office is searching for them. The details are slim, though. We do know it is 3 men, they believe potentially young black adults, but right now now, that's who the sheriff's office is looking for, those 3 men who reversed again in a Mercedes before jumping out and getting into a gunfight with a man and a woman as they were pushing a stroller, leading to a 2-year-old little girl being shot and taken to the hospital where she's currently in surgery. If you have any information about this shooting that could help police locate these 3 men, simply contact the Brevard County Sheriff's Office. But for now, reporting live in Cocoa, Chancellor LuAnne, Fox 35 News.
Thanks, Chancellor. Also breaking right now, 24 illegal immigrants arrested at construction sites in Sumter County.
Homeland Security says this is all part of an ongoing Florida crackdown. Fox 35's Marlisa Goldsmith is live in the Alert Center tonight with this new video from Wild